Okay, I'd like to just start by thanking you all for taking the time to come here tonight. Yeah, I'm just going to talk about my career as a portrait painter, or as an artist, I suppose. My relationship to portraiture, how it's changed over the years, what's influenced me technologically and sort of and how my methodology's changed and how what it's been affected by. I'm going to go kind of chronologically. I think that's the best way to do it, I think, so you can see that sort of progression. I'm going to start, I suppose, where my career started in earnest in 1996, winning the BP Portrait Award. This is the painting. It's 23 years ago now. Like something like that. That's the holy grail, I think, for portrait painters in this country. It is an institution of itself. It's been going, almost 40 years now. I was very young when I won it. It came as a big shock. I think it comes to everyone as a big shock. I'd been to see that exhibition a few times in my 20s while I was at college, and I was just intimidated, like most people are at that age. And I think, like most artists, it's the kind of at that age, you kind of your year revolves around that. If you're trying to make it, especially at that time, I was sort of, I planned, most years you plan a painting. I did that for about 4 years, I think, which I never submitted either. Because I'd go and see it and then I was just like, well, there's not much point really. I need another year, I'd just keep practicing and so I left university in 1992. About 6 months after, I moved to Paris with a girlfriend of mine. She was learning French. I ended up working on the street, kind of busking. I was doing classical copies. And in my spare time, I carried on painting portraits, basically. I think in the second year I was there, I painted this in Paris anyway, that's what I'm trying to say. And I took it to the frame. I wasn't going to send it. I was, and then I wasn't. And I took it to the framers, and she convinced me to actually send it. I didn't have the postage to do it either. She lent me the postage. So it was, it was a kind of a nice story from the start. And anyway, it ended up being submitted. And then when however long it takes, they notified me that I'd been selected and that I'd won a prize, which at that time there was first, second, third, and I think there was £500. So I assumed that I was right at the bottom, that I'd got £500, which I was, ecstatic about. The fact that I'd got in as well. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up winning it, and I suppose that sort of set the trajectory for the next sort of 30 years. I'd say I wasn't prepared or I didn't fully utilise that opportunity at the time, I don't think. It came at the wrong time for me, I think. I was a bit too young. But anyway, I muddled through. Part of the prize is winning a commission. I painted Michael Caine. Again, I'd never really done any commission work. I'd not sort of, especially, like someone as sort of iconic as Mr. Caine as well. It took about 18 months to actually get from winning to actually getting your sitter and then sort of meetings and arranging. It takes even longer sometimes, so it took about 2 years before that. But yeah, it really was it made it very easy for me. He contacted me initially after sort of things had been arranged. I wasn't quite sure. I was given 3 days initially, and sort of how, like, and if I was to tackle something like this again, I'm not sure I'd do it in the same way, but I was like, at that time as well, I was working just from life. I wasn't using photographs or anything like that, sort of, which has changed subsequently. And so I just thought I'm going to have to get it all down as quick as possible, which was quite like a stupid thing to do, like in hindsight. But luckily, I mean, he was such a great sitter. He sat there like a statue, to be honest. And initially, I think we only had 2 days, and I think he saw how much I'd got done in that time, and he said, "I can see you're going to need a lot longer." And he took the rest of the week off, and so like, I had 5 days there, sort of, and I managed to almost get all that done. I had like a friend photograph it as well. So I got this much done, and I had the possibility of I had the photographs and maybe to start again, or sort of, I had the sort of. But the more I thought about it, I kind of liked this idea of him. He is an actor, and I think this. I purposefully left it like this. I think it's a kind of decapitation. But it's, the main thought behind it was that, being an actor, you use your face, and that's your sort of, a bit like what we do. And he kind of changes, like he has different faces and different heads for different sort of characters. So that was the thinking behind that sort of. That's what I tell everyone anyway. So these, I haven't got too many images from that time. This was painted just before the BP one, but this is, like I said, I was working just from life, just from people that I knew. And so I've kind of termed these like analog paintings, because they do change. This is like sort of digital. Around about 2000, things changed quite dramatically. I think for a lot of artists, that sort of, it affected me in quite a big way. This is just like another self-portrait from life. So yeah, round about. I mean, I've got quite a lot of other paintings that I've not put in that are from that sort of time. But around about, I suppose it was just after 2000s, like digital technology became sort of kind of affordable, or it just became available. But it was very expensive still. But I think digital photography, especially for me, kind of changed everything. Working primarily from life, then kind of having to back that up with photography, which at the time, you'd kind of take to boots, unless you had sort of the means to do your own things development-wise. It was pretty hit and miss, and so you end up working, from kind of a bunch of rubbish photographs you got back from boots, trying to sort of piece together what you'd already done and trying to get sitters to come back. And so you were constantly stopping and starting things. So it's very rare that you had, like enough time to be working on something continuously. So this is probably like the first painting that I did that I spent a good amount of time on, working from a digital image. So I was working from, at the time, I was working from like prints off a digital camera. I later went on to work off a screen digitally, like a lot of artists do now, I think. Also at this time, I think digital photography kind of, this is when I stopped drawing as well. Like, not drawing, but using drawings in that way to actually lay the foundations for a painting. I think digital photography's kind of replaced that, or it did for me at the time. So you were able to take lots of digital photographs, alter things, you could get the feedback immediately, you could see what you wanted to change. Sorry, I need to keep moving on with these images. Again, so this is sort of, also it sort of had a different effect as well. They weren't like photographs. You could look at them on a monitor and you've got backlighting as well. So it kind of, yeah, it changed the way you looked at the images that you took, I think. And then at this time I spent about probably 3 or 4 years working like this, yeah, just using a digital camera, taking lots of photographs, yeah, and I kind of stopped drawing basically. I considered this to be my sort of stage of drawing. I also used, like image, like Photoshop, things like that, to change things. Even if you're not a great photographer on digital photography, you can use like these applications to change sort of what you wanted to do. I also started adding effects, filters, things like that. So, although they're still portraits, they are about other things as well. They're about sort of mixing that process with actual portraiture, which it gave me a bit more sort of scope for experimentation, I think. Like sometimes you get, like portraiture for me has always sort of been, I found it a little bit of an anachronism, or I've struggled with a sort of genre that, it does kind of limit you in that way. So I've always looked for different ways of kind of using portraiture, in a slightly different way. I've tried other subject matter, but I'm always drawn back to it in some way. These are friends of mine that I know quite well. I tend to use people that I know for portraiture. I don't do very much commission work. The stuff that I have done's, I wouldn't show them to anyone really, or I wouldn't put my name to them. And yeah, I don't get the best out of myself doing that, I don't think. So these, again, like this is kind of around about 9/11 as well. So the mood, I think, of some of these paintings as well is kind of, I think a lot of my work's kind of a bit, it's not that happy. I don't know how to describe it really. It's just sort of, that's probably about 2 foot by a foot and a half. Yeah. I was going to say, sorry, before I started, if anyone's got any questions while I'm going along, rather than doing it at the end, if you want to ask something as I'm going, that's fine. Yeah.
So when you're using digital photography at the time, so you are using photographs and you are working from life as well, or just from photographs?
Yeah, this time. Well, I suppose I'm working from life with a camera, so people are there. Yeah, but like I say, it kind of replaced drawing. So like before, you'd start off with a drawing, or you'd use that to get your ideas and sort of get an idea of your sitter composition. But then there was no need to do that in a way. I was like this sort of kind of cut that process out at the time. So again, these are using filters on Photoshop. Also, again, drawing kind of, I started squaring things up, that kind of method. But then I got a digital projector, so I could just sort of take the photographs, project them, draw around them. It was quite a sort of, well, it was a good way of getting the image that you wanted at the time. It was sort of, I wanted to replicate what I was seeing on the, so it's not quite, it's photorealism in a way, but it's sort of, but it wasn't about that sort of. It wasn't so much about photography. It was, but it was about that sort of digital process, I think.
Well, this sort of looks as if he's taking a selfie.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that your idea?
Yeah, so that's a self-portrait. Yeah, so it was, yeah. So I mean, I've done quite a lot of self-portraits. I don't but they're a great way. Anyone who's started off doing, it's a great way to practice your trade. You've got yourself, and I usually do it when I'm experimenting with things. You're a good.
Taking a selfie because that sort of looks. I mean, that's you. But
Yeah.
to me, that looks like somebody who is slightly terrified of what they might find in a selfie.
Yeah, yeah. This is, I think, before the term selfie was even sort of, but I was quite familiar with the selfie. I think most portrait painters, it's part of your stock in trade.
To do a self-portrait is what I'm getting from that.
Yeah. But like I said, that was around about 9/11. So that's it, that was kind of about, all those pictures were about that kind of mood that people had at sort of that time. A little bit, yeah. You were sort of, and I think also it's the time of the internet where you're getting that information. You're getting all the same information from a screen in front of you. It's not so it is about all that kind of change that was going on. Yeah. That's another self-portrait. So that's mixed media. Again, and then sort of playing around with filters and Photoshop, that lots of accidents happened that were sort of, that you didn't really, that I'd never seen before. I think at that time you were sort of, so, yeah, there were just kind of endless possibilities, really.
Is that not a painting?
That's a painting, yeah. But yeah, a painting of a digital image that kind of, yeah. So playing around with, yeah.
What materials are you using?
That was mixed media, that was oil, that was acrylic, oil, spray paint, enamel, yeah, a bit of everything, yeah. So yeah, I was experimenting with materials as well as sort of the way you sort of, okay, so that kind of led me up to the mid-noughties. Then I went back to, and then I kind of ran out of ideas, really. Being, at that time as well, I was making more of a living from doing illustration and bits and bobs and decorating and art technician stuff. I mean, I was exhibiting and I was selling the occasional sort of portrait and the odd commission. In 2004, I went to the Royal College. Again, just I kind of having been in a studio, it seemed like a good idea to sort of reevaluate my sort of direction. And I think going back to do an MA in my, I suppose I was late 30s. That was quite good. I just needed to sort of re-establish a dialogue with some other painters and sort of see how I could move my practice on. I mean, I experimented a lot with sculpture, photography, but again, I think I always come back to portraiture in some way. This was sort of, but I suppose it is a portrait. It's kind of a still life. This is a series of 4. So this was just kind of This is just stuff that was hanging around in the studio, and then I ended up doing these kind of anthropomorphic sort of still lives. So I was just drawn back to portraiture in some way. I think almost everything that I do paint ends up being a portrait in some way. So these, they're not too big. But that was a series of 4. And I think they're in the Lloyd's building somewhere. That's part of the sort of, that was part of the Amlin painting prize at the Royal College that they won. Again, they went on to sort of like, and then I did another series. Again, I'm not sure how to describe them. They're kind of still lifes, but they're also portraits, and they have got like another narrative within that about the self and relationships, and yeah, at the time, yeah. So these are just bits of wood that I found. You know, they're kind of found objects. But then you can read into it, you know, like you can read other things into them. Yeah, and then they kind of got, these are just like planks of plywood that are sort of, that they just started off as sort of observational paintings, and then just kind of, you know, then faces come out of them, and yeah, other bits and bobs, and they're sort of semi-abstract. These are quite big. I just wanted to paint some big paintings. But yeah, there are lots of faces in there and odd. So these are quite big. They're probably about 2 meters square. Yeah. So they're in between like figurative and still lifes, and again it gave me an opportunity to play a bit more with colour and different sort of a different palette, different, like working on like portraits. You know, they're quite detailed and sort of you're using little brushes and you have to concentrate. And these were just like a bit bigger and more gestural and sort of, you know, I just tried to have a bit more fun. And there's elements of humour, I think, in these that are sort of that the portraits don't have most of the time. So then leaving Royal College, I wasn't sure. Again, I just kind of went back to portraits intuitively, but this is like the start of a series that I did that's like ongoing that are called the malcontents. They're from kind of found images, random found images. Usually these images like just present themselves. I sometimes go looking for them. They're an amalgamation also of images that I find, people that I know, sort of memories, just colour schemes, things that I want to try out. So again, I'm using portraiture in a way where I'm kind of trying to sort of, you know, like explore sort of possibilities within paintings. But yeah, you know, for me, I find the portrait I'm just more familiar with this. Again, I was kind of making frames. These are sort of, I found that it's kind of, I wasn't too precious. I was trying to use things that had been sort of disregarded and sort of, again, sort of based on kind of different source material. This was about this is my son's mother before I met her, and it was like this, it was kind of this weird kind of guy off of a video game that I'd seen, that I took a still of. And that, it was just a really odd mixture of different sort of sources that kind of came together in a really odd way. And that kind of set me on a different sort of way of making paintings about sort of faces of people. That was kind of uncanny how that happened. Again, so I was also trying to base these on kind of the literature that I was reading at the time. In particular, Northampton, I don't know if you know, is a Norwegian sort of early 20th century, like sort of 19. but like the characters in his book, again, Ferdinand Celine, a French, these kind of odd sort of outcasty sort of eccentric characters. They're also, again, based on sort of found images and people that I knew. They were usually, at best, they were kind of a mixture of 3 different people. A real person, a fictional person, and like found objects that were sort of, and then sort of characters from this. I don't know if you know Gogol, there's a story called The Nose, which I think Woody Allen also used, where this character, where his nose just slides off of his face and it sort of goes around Moscow and he has to chase it. Yeah. And there's a bit of Elvis Presley in there and my flatmate, and yeah, at the time. So it was kind of, so I'm kind of building this sort of narrative within a narrative, and then sort of, yeah, making my own characters up. Again, this is like when I moved to Denmark after I left the Royal College, and this was sort of, again, a found image, some other person, like a girlfriend, sister's friend, and an odd photograph. So they're sort of made up of odd sort of things. Again, more characters from books. And so they all had kind of roles for me along. This is like called this one's called The Philosopher. Again, it was like an odd guy that I met, a found photograph kind of amalgamation of things. Again. So this is another, like, it's like you're not sure if he's turning your back, he's actually facing you, or he's turning his back to you. But I won't go into the details too much, but it was, yeah, also based on another character in a book. Most odd, like most of the writers that I did like turned out to be sort of sort of Nazi sympathisers, like my 2 favourite writers, which I thought was a bit, I didn't know how to take it. But yeah. But their work's been reassessed on a literary level. And but yeah, that painting was about that in part, in some way. Again, that was a still from a Ken Russell film. My mother-in-law. That's my mother and Angus Young, the guitarist from AC/DC. Yeah. So these are ongoing. I kind of add to these, like when I find they sort of present themselves to me a little bit. I don't go out looking for them so much. If I do, I kind of get in a muddle. It doesn't always work like that. So it's yeah, I just sort of do them when they happen, kind of thing. So that's probably the most recent one, which was about 3 years ago. So this takes me up to about 2014 now. So I've and I've kind of gone full circle at this time. I've sort of started, although I've gone back to drawing again, back to that sort of analogue idea. So I was using, well, it's a mixture of everything now. So it's like drawings, working from life, and digital photography. Yeah. No, so I'm using like drawing to get everything onto the canvas. Yeah, I don't use a projector anymore. So I'll do probably, at the moment I'm doing for this I'll probably do about half a dozen drawings, you know, of different parts and sort of as well as taking photographs. Then I'll look at the photographs, I'll go back to the drawings, maybe I'll make some drawings from the photographs, get the person back in. So it's just like a patchwork of trying to get what you actually want. And then, like, I suppose then you actually draw it onto the canvas, which is like the last sort of drawing that you make, where you try and sort of bring all these things together. And then usually it's like using like the digital images to fill in sort of, you know, like dresses and hair and things that sort of tend to move a lot. You know, like where I can, I'll work with a face from life. Yeah, then other, you know, peripheral things I'll just fill in. But I don't tend to copy sort of, so you use them as sort of guides, you know, like colour match, you know, like you kind of sort of, the more you do it, you partly painting from memory, partly from, you know, a few different things. So like by the time you've looked at what your reference material is to mix in the colour, you've made a few other decisions in that interim and sort of, yeah. So hopefully they don't end up looking like photographs, although you are using them. So this was like a series I did, like these are all in Denmark. That one that won a competition in Denmark. It's a bit like the BP, but it's like a Scandinavian thing. So like financially, like prizes, or sometimes, you know, I can afford to spend a bit of time making a series of paintings. And they usually run out of money. They're difficult things to make a living from, I think, portraits. If you're not a commission artist, or you need other things to supplement your income while you're taking your time to sort of make these sort of paintings that you can make your own. So yeah, again, these are friends that I know. So you tend to go through a set of friends as well. I have sort of, you know, you've certain parts in your life, you have a lot of good friends that, you know, I tend to paint all those, and then, you know, you meet other people and you know, your relationships change, and then you sort of go on to sort of, but then I've been revisiting like old sitters again, which is nice, you know, after 20 years, it's kind of good to sort of go back and paint people that you've painted before. Yeah. So again, some of these are painted private. That was painted like totally from life. I did like a series of drawings, and, you know, it's to do with time as well. If people have got time to sit for you and they're willing to, then, you know, it really is a nice thing to do, to have someone. And yeah, and they turn out differently as well from other types of painting. These are chronologically in order, so this is like, yeah. So these are all around very like the same time, within sort of like 6 months, a year. Again, this was sort of, yeah, going back to drawing again. So I was like, and round about now, I'm enjoying. I'm spending a lot more time drawing from life. I'm sort of really enjoying that. I've sort of gone back to, I mean, this is pen and ink, but like charcoal, yeah, I'm really sort of in love with that again. And I think that's what I find more exciting. That's where you kind of really bash out what you're trying to achieve, you know, like, I mean, and I've gone back to another sort of, I've tried to sort of up my technical levels as well. This is, yeah, about 4 years ago. So I'd never actually done like a full figure until sort of, yeah, 4 years ago. I'd always just been interested in heads, really, and that sort of dynamic. And sort of, so that was quite a struggle for me to, because usually I can concentrate on that small space and sort of, they're quite intense, and this was like a different, you know, having to, yeah, I struggled to finish it or to keep the enthusiasm going for sort of that amount of time. Again, this is a similar sort of time. These are on canvas. So like I kind of flip between painting on board and canvas. These ones that I've just shown, they're all on canvas. Okay, that's a fish. So like at that point I moved back to Derbyshire. I was in Derbyshire for about 18 months, where I didn't have any access to any people to sit for me really, but I'm quite a keen fisherman. So I did a series. I spent a year painting fish for fishermen. But again, they're kind of like portraits, I think, like compared to sort of other piscatorial art out there. And yeah, I just thought I'd put that in. So again, like I'll do about 2 years or 18 months painting portraits, and then I can't. Not that I get bored, but I need a break or I do something else. Like at this time, I sort of started making furniture as well. So I didn't do any painting for like almost 3 years, like portrait painting. I did a PGCE at that time as well, and I started teaching. I was teaching for a year. And then I suppose like 18 months ago I started again doing the portraits. Yeah, I'm working in that way again, just doing lots of drawings. Yeah, so I'll get someone to sit for as long as possible. So I'll make 3 or 4 drawings like that. And then sort of, I'll take some photographs and then kind of...
What about the finish? Did you take a photograph?
No, I kind of stole images from here and there off the internet. I had some other friends who'd photographed, yeah. So they're like again, like a patchwork of sort of, found images and fish that I'd caught as well, that I used, yeah. So these are quite quick paintings. These would take me like a day, pretty much. But I like I do like working in that quick way. Like I think they're the paintings that I like the most, where they're not too laboured, and I'll sometimes do 2 or 3 a day. Like if they're not working, I'll just start again, and sort of they're quick enough where you can sort of tell quite quickly if they're going to work or not, and sort of they're a bit more fun for me. So again, these are just like good friends or friends of friends. Yeah.
Are you influenced by anyone?
Sorry?
Who are your main influences?
They change all the time, you know. I think obviously people like, there's obvious ones that I won't sort of, yeah. But you know, like English painters, English figurative painters, all those like. Oh, sorry.
When you have a sitter, do you sit very close?
Yeah, they are, quite intimate. I started doing woodcuts as well last year, which I kind of enjoyed. Again, using like old paintings or images, like old drawings. This was a commission, like the only one I've done for quite a long time, but it's someone that I kind of knew quite well. But again, they end up being different paintings. They are, you know, they're sort of, he was a retired headmaster. It's that kind of, you know, it's got that format. Bits of it I enjoyed, you know, but then it's not the kind of painting that you would make, that I would make, left to my own devices, but...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The thing is, and it's a difficult question, but they commission you because of what you do,
Yeah.
and then you are saying, presumably I think you're saying, that you're constricting the vision to meet the demands of the commission portrait. But there's a funny question there that I don't even know the question is or the answer.
Yeah,
We
no.
are decommissioning because of this wonderful stuff that we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're slightly limiting it to do this picture for them.
Yeah.
Why should, how does that work? You not say, how does it work? Because surely
Yeah.
they want that image and you're slightly trimming that wonderful thing that you have.
Yeah, well, I think it's like, yeah. So he tried to bring some of that in, but I suppose he was such a nice guy, and I suppose where it's going, you know, it's in like in the sort of, it's an old school, and he's an old headmaster, and it goes next to the other old headmasters. Yeah, I mean, I could have done it slightly differently, I suppose, but it needed to be, there were certain stipulations about it. But then again, he is quite informal in terms of those kind of, yeah. But I understand that question. It's like, you know, they do pick you for that sort of, for what you're known for in a way. But,
Can we check in a bit more about the process for something like this? So, you know, how much was him sitting? How much was?
yeah. We did quite a bit. We did like, again, it's just straight from drawing. So I had like 2 days, but I did this in 8 days from start to finish, which is really quick. But yeah. So yeah, from the drawings, I kind of got the what I wanted from probably 2 days of drawing, and then from photographs, yeah, it was just kind of filling it in. So it is, yeah.
For something like the shirt.
Yeah.
To work from
Yeah. Yeah, these are a bit more recent. So these are like slightly different. They're a bit more experimental. Again, working with different sort of colours and palettes and sort of. And this was like lots of kind of glazes. But it started off as a portrait, like a sort of a painted portrait. And so this photograph was the first one that I took of a series that was totally underexposed and sort of, and I ended up going back to that, you know, the wrong or the worst photograph to get sort of what I wanted. I mean, I did do like subsequent paintings from this sort of sitting, but yeah, there was something about that I kind of liked. So this is, yeah. So these are the kind of drawings that I do initially, that I'm doing at the minute. Like, they're on newspaper, like with charcoal. So they're proper working drawings. I just kind of, you know, I'm not too. So yeah, it was a drawing of that. So I probably did, like, again, half a dozen drawings like this, just to sort of fine tune those angles and sort of, yeah, what it was. Not all from the sitter, like some from photographs. So I do what I could from the sitting and then sort of tweak it from the photographs. Yeah. So I think all the hard work, you know, goes on in the photograph, in the drawing, and then sort of, yeah.
So do you draw onto the canvas with a pencil, or do you paint the drawing on, or how do you work?
I kind of, yeah. So once I've got to that stage where I'm happy with the drawing, I suppose the final drawing happens on the canvas, and I'll leave those last kind of tweaks, like for that last kind of initial. So unless I'm really like a drawing, or then I'll just take a lot of time or care in copying that drawing onto the canvas. But then I've tried to, like, the way I'm working now is be a bit more sort of, yeah, where I have to make quite a lot of decisions in that final sort of stage of taking the drawing into a painting. Yeah. Which takes a bit more concentration. You have to sort of kind of, I think just because when you're working, because there's lots of bits that I have to do from photography, like, you know, like all the sort of, most of it, apart from, you know, the actual bits that are fleshy, I suppose. And so, yeah, to kind of get away from it being sort of literal and photographic, I'm trying to remove that process away from it, but still using it. Again, yeah, these are sort of, again, that's just working, like, that was quick, that was like probably 2 or 3 hours from life. So sometimes it's just like, if I get the opportunity, well, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. The ones that I don't work, I just paint over. Again, that was like working the same way, like quite a lot of drawing, taking that drawing into that final stage again, and then sort of, getting what I can from sort of the sitter being in front of me.
You don't have a sort of set colour palette for portraiture?
I did, no, like, again, I kind of change, like, at the minute I've got like 25 colours on my, which is, but then I'm kind of trying things out and sort of, sometimes, depends what I'm doing, sometimes I'll limit it right down. Yeah.
Do you think
I've got no rules.
Scandinavia, because it seems to be, it seems sort of fresh, and the furniture and fabrics and things, it all...
Yeah, I suppose there's that kind of, and I still spend, my son's Danish, and I spend a lot of time in, Scandinavia. And I've also kind of studied that sort of, I'm interested in that northern romantic ideal about painting, opposed to sort of like the modernist idea. So I am more interested in that. I was going to talk about it, but probably not got that much time. Where different sort of ideas about the individual creep in, about sort of, that are probably, less about the individual, more about sort of, society and nature.
Because there's always a bit of wood and fur, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely, I think it's had an influence. Again, this is like a big drawing that I just thought I'd try out some sort of, which has been really helpful. This is probably about 4 foot by nearly 3. I've only done this one. I'm going to do a few more. But I think like sculpture, it helped me kind of work out some ideas about how I'm going to like apply paint. In a different way. It's just a more physical. It was like drawing that big's quite physical. I really enjoyed that sort of. I don't think I'd ever paint that big, but drawing. I think I enjoyed it, and then that's kind of like the lesson. So the painting's just like life size, like sort of not huge. And that's kind of where I'm up to now, sort of, So I've kind of gone full circle, I think, in the way that I've worked, or the limitations that I did have. Oh, right, I don't know, that wasn't, that's it. Stop. Happy accident, so I've kind of gone, like, from the limitations, I think that were there when I first started. This is how traditionally you did things, from life. But it turns out that that's not how, like, people, like painters in the past, they didn't work like that. It's become evident now that, like Vermeer and people like that were using lenses, and, there were lots of sort of technological devices that were used to aid you to sort of represent things. And I think, I've tried out different methods, and I've kind of come a little bit full circle. But I still use, you know, it's a kind of a, yeah, you know, you use what you can, a bit of everything. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Any questions?
So these latest ones,
Yeah.
there are lots of thin glazes on it, the way that the paint.
Not really. They're just painted quite thinly. They're probably about, yeah, they're almost all done in one sitting almost. Not one sitting, but yeah, they're not sort of worked into sort of. Sorry, the one before that one, no, that was kind of worked on quite a bit. That one's quite, yeah, they're just thin really, and it's underpainting, yeah. But not a lot of paint. Okay, yeah. Oh. Sorry? I had to pay him, yeah, he's my son, yeah. But I had to wait for him to know the value of, yeah, of what I was doing, and for him to know the value of, yeah, his input into it. But yeah, he did well.
Sorry, do you tend to work in a sort of detailed area and kind of work out, or do you put layers down?
A bit of both. Yeah. Yeah.
And is there a certain medium you use? Or? I'm asking all the technical cheap questions.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's oil, you know, just like kind of thin oil, and slowly build it up. Just, yeah, you know, really traditional, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah.
How long did you take to work on the sign?
I did only about 2 hours that he sat in 2 sittings. But again, it's like from drawings and, you know, from photographs and, yeah, and a bit of memory.
What does he think he does?
It's hard to gauge from a 10-year-old what they think. So, but yeah, no, I think he's very yeah. I think they have trouble articulating what they. Yeah. No, he was. I think he was very proud. Yeah. I don't know. It's only like that big. Yeah, it's quite small. Not super small. No. Okay, right. Any that's yeah. Thanks.